There is one very interesting quote. It says, "Not all psychopaths are in prison, some are in the boardroom." In this research, it says that indeed, some very extreme personality will shape a person to become the leader. Not only they're in jail, instead they also exist in the organization. This extreme personality, including someone who feel that they are superior, they have an extremely high level of need for power, they also having a very high level of the egocentric, and for their lack of the empathy is not very responsible, and also have the tendency to violate the social norms. These individuals, surprisingly, will also exist in the organization. It's around 4% of the high-level managers in this are having this problem. However, they also have the ability to charm, manipulate, and mirror others. So we can consider that this is quite very interesting phenomenon in the organization and psychology. This is interesting to see the positive relationship between capitalism and psychopathy relationship. And here we got some evidence to show that capitalism will shape and reward those psychopathic behavior. And for in some cases, such as American health insurance industry, and also well in some banking market, and we can see that people's and leaders' psychopathic behavior will also be rewarded. To understand the myth of the psychopathic behavior of a leader, I highly recommend you to take a look at this theory program. This theory program is called House of Cards. In the program, the US President Frank Underwood is the US President. He is using both the motivational or the psychopathic behaviors in guiding their subordinates. This is a very interesting question to note. If you're interested, you can click into this link and to see how and what does this president do. This is really quite interesting theory program seasons. Is leadership in people's genes? This is quite interesting questions to note. Would you pick the winner of a local election just by looking at their appearance and face? In some cases, it might, at least in certain extents, we could and we would. If you could, what would that tell you about leadership? And why? And do we make assessment of leadership capability in an unbiased way? The answer is no, because human beings will always have some bias. We always judge people as well as their leadership according to their face and appearance. Let's work on this experiment together. In this pair, two person, and which one would you select to become our president? The left one or the right one? I think the majority of you may choose the right one with your glasses. How about in pair two, which one, the left one or the right one? Again, the majority of people may choose the right one. The last pair, the left one or the right one? I think for most of you may choose the left one. Indeed, this is a very interesting experiment. And this experiment, in an experiment of the boat captain to choose the one who should be the captain. In the experiment one, 680 adults and in their competence rating and based only on their appearance and photos of the candidate's face, which is predicting the actual election results 72% of the time. In the experiment 2, we are also using the children this time, not the adult, as the sample, and to ask them who would you choose as the captain of the boat. And the kids' decisions were correct 71% of this time. And they are also presenting the children with pair photos of Obama and Hillary Clinton, and also the comparison between Obama and John McCain. And it shows that both adults and children will have a correct choice of the elections to choosing the bold captain. And this experiment shows us that indeed not only adults but also children will also like to choose someone who have a good appearance. For them, they will consider that the one who have a good and better appearance would have a more and higher potential to be a good leader. And so, would you consider that this is a biased decision? Yes, we do. Indeed, in lots of the president election, or also in any other leader evaluation, for someone who have a better appearance usually would rate higher. And so again, this is a biased decision that we will make. One of the typical evidence that we can find is in the 1960 presidential US election, the first debate on the TV show. In this TV show, and it seems that Nixon has recently had a surgery and lost weight. With the ill-fit suit and pancake makeup, he doesn't look very well. But candidly, he looks very intelligent, smart, with the very good fitting. But in this debate, for one who only listens to the radio instead of watching TV, we feel that Nixon will run the debate. Instead of, if people watching the TV on the debate, and most of them and many of them will feel that Nixon and doesn't work very well because he was in a very bad appearance and outlook appeared in the debate. So as you can see that indeed appearance and outlook does really make a matter in affecting people's judgment on the leadership of a person. So what does all this study telling us about leadership? All these studies point to the biological basis for the leadership. They are using the evolutionary psychology and explanation assumption to explain this. And they're telling us that what characteristic and some inborn factor will make a person to become an effective leader. Indeed, people will have the built-in mechanism to quickly recognize whether this person is suitable or effective or not. And a lot of the results are quite promising for the theory development on the cognitive leadership prototypes. It tells us that all of us, indeed, will also have some expectation and the prototypes stored in our mind. And we always make the comparisons whether this person will fit with our expectation. If yes, and we will classify them as the good leader. If not, and we do not consider that he or she is an effective leader. Indeed, we also see that this research direction is still developing. It is quite interesting to see how and what types of the phototypes match with our expectation. What are the practical implications of the trait approach of leadership? This approach will consider that traits are relatively stable and inborn. And trust, if the leadership is determined by some traits, including like intelligence, physical characteristic, or personality, it was suggesting that the organization need to take particular focus on selecting the right candidates, because they will consider that those characteristics cannot be developed and trained. And so selection becomes the most important issue in choosing the right persons to fill in the leadership positions. Indeed, we can find that there are a lot of the critiques for the trait approach of the leadership. Number one is that it is a lack of the theoretical reasoning, because we cannot conclude that which traits is the most important predictor in predicting the leadership effectiveness. Some people will consider this set of the capability, but other we consider other characteristics and attributes, so we cannot have a concrete solution and conclusion for that. In addition, the trait approach will also provide little guidance concerning what advices or training to current or soon-to-be the leaders, because it shows that all the leaders are inborn. It supposes that, and so it provides little guidance on how should we develop and train those leaders. Typically, it also relies on a self-reported measure because personality or values, they are all highly self-reported, and we are not quite sure to what extent it can truly reflect what the person are. And indeed, recent research also highlights the potential instability of many traits. We don't know to what extent this personality or traits can be consistently appear over a long period of time. It might be changes from time to time or after a certain period of time. So a lot of critiques still exist for this trait approach of leadership. That's why later on, another school of the leadership scholars proposed the behavioral approach of leadership. And this approach is telling us that instead of some characteristic or attribute that is inborn cannot be changed, and we are looking into what behavior, considering about what behavior will shape a person to become an effective leader. And one of the behavior is consideration. It refers to the extent to which the leader demonstrates that they trust their subordinate, respect their ideas, and also shows consideration on their feelings. And then other styles is initiating structure. It refers to the extent to which the leader defines and structures their own role and the role of their subordinates towards the goal attainment. The leader actively directs the group activities. So on one hand, they have to trust on their subordinate, they show the consideration about and respect their feelings. On the other hand, they also need to define their own role and to lead the subordinate and providing the guidance to let employees to attain the goal. And so they're looking into what behavior that to shape the leader effectiveness instead. We can consider that being the consideration is a kind of the people-oriented behavior, and initiating a structure is more task-oriented. And according to the research, we found that it seems that the people-oriented behavior considerations will make a big difference in facilitating some positive consequences, including like the leader effectiveness, the followers' motivation, satisfaction, as well as the overall performance. If we combine these two together, we can also see that they also have a positive relationship, significant effects on those positive outcomes. And we can conclude that if the leaders, they can behave in this way and is positively related to the work performance and bring in lots of the positive outcome to the team. Behavioral approach of the leadership, often described as the task-based and the relationship-based approach. Different from the trait approach of the leadership, it seems that the leader's behavior can be trained and developed. However, this is still not perfect because for this approach, it still ignores the situation in which leadership takes place, especially if we can see that the task-oriented approach in some certain experience, in some certain context, probably this may not be preferable. However, as compared to the task-based approach, the relationship-based approach consideration, it sounds more welcome and is positively associated with satisfaction and also some positive consequences and outcome. Indeed, in short, and it seems that it has the potential to integrating both trail and behavioral approach to explain the effectiveness of the leadership. In some of the interesting research, it's found that if both the trail approach and the behavioral approach combine as the integrated model, and we can see that they can largely explain the leader effectiveness. In one of the study in 2011, it shows that the personality traits such as intelligence, openness, extroversion, etc., will highly affecting the leader's behavior in such a way that they will both high on the task-oriented as well as the considerations approach. If they are doing so, we will also help to develop the leader effectiveness, will have some positive consequences on that. Last but not least, for the introduction of the classical view of leadership approach. That is the contingency theory of leadership. In an earlier time, we talk about the trait as well as the behavioral leadership approach, but both of the approaches do not consider about in what situation, which type of the leadership style is more preferable. And that's why later on, in order to understand the leadership theory, we also need to consider about in what situation which leadership should take place. This is what we call the contingency theory of leadership. And here is some of the evidence to show us that why some personality doesn't work in certain context. And here is the example of when extroversion doesn't work. In one of the study in year 2011, although we noticed that extroversion is positively correlated with leadership effectiveness, but it seems doesn't work when employees are highly proactive. Because extrovert leaders, they are not willing to work with those employees because they are the one who likely to be assertive and in control. It seems that it doesn't work quite well in this context. And so we can see that this approach suggests that there is no best leadership styles. Instead, it depends on different situation. In some of the situation, perhaps different types of the leadership approach is more preferable than the other one. And managers' leadership approach must be adaptable and flexible to meet with the changing needs of the employees as well as the situation.